Welcome back. Now we are counting down to CNBC-TV18's Banking Transformation Summit. Ritu Singh is joining us from Ground Zero. In fact, she's joining us from the red carpet where the bigwigs of the Indian banking industry have started to gather. Ritu, it's the second edition of the Banking Transformation Summit. You're speaking to bankers. Tell us what is causing the most excitement this time around.
Well, Ashmit, I'm going to have to ask the bankers about what is causing the most excitement this time around. And you know, it's not just the banks; it's the NBFC space that's also been buzzing. And we have Mr. Chakravarti from Sri Ram Finance with us. Mr. Chakravarti, just start by telling us it's been a solid couple of years for the NBFC sector, but now, with the regulatory environment, with the liquidity tightening, do you see a bit of a slowdown for the industry before we see a pickup again? With the costs of funds, etc., also rising up for the NBFC. So overall, how's the year ahead looking like?
See, as of now, I don't think there is anything that we need to be really concerned about as of now.
Yeah.
Liquidity tightening, yes. The Reserve Bank of India actually is the regulator is asking banks to slow down lending to non-banks.
Yeah.
And they are also insisting that the non-banks raise some of the funds that instead of depending on the banking sector from the markets are also, as of now, they are very positive. Hopefully, the bond markets will deepen, and I'm also meeting a lot of youngsters who are actually showing interest in bonds.
I see.
So, which is actually a surprising thing. In fact, I've met a few people from the IT sector last couple of days, and most of the youngsters are, interested in investing in bonds. So, that could be one way for most of the NBFCs to raise money. As far as the lending business is concerned, the demand is still there. There is still a lot of unmet demand. But then probably the regulator is also justified in expressing his concern on the runaway growth.
Yeah.
So probably we'll have to calibrate our growth a bit.
Well, that runaway growth that you're talking about largely in the unsecured segment, and that has started to come down a bit, thanks to some of the measures that RBI has taken, for instance, the risk weights, of course. But, now the fear is last year we were brushing it aside as something that probably affects the fintechs. Now that we're seeing it in larger personal loans, also, to some extent, going beyond that, to MFI, and now with several states going into elections this year, perhaps agriculture as well. Are you concerned there are these, bigger pockets of stress that may emerge?
See, again, of course, the regulator was concerned that most of the money that's being disbursed through personal loans, because the end use is not clear and it's being used for speculative purposes.
Yes.
See, the BNPL was one big concern that they had. I think that also has slowed down a little bit. But see, personal loan space, most of the NBFCs have become conscious, and they are actually tightened their lending norms. So I don't think we should be really worried if your credit norms are actually good and you are looking at the customer people income and making sure that they are not over leveraged. On the MFI side, there is a stress here and there. That is also because of the over leverage. And see, most of the MFIs have a good amount of margin between the cost of funds and the lending rate. So probably a little hiccup here and there, they should be able to handle it.
Well,
I don't see any systemic risk in this.
Well, we hope that is the case, Mr. Chakravarti. Thank you very much and welcome again to our summit. We will catch up with you, but Yash, for now, you have another guest with you.
Well, that's correct, Ritu. We have Mr. Vishnu Dusad joining us, the Managing Director and Co-Founder at Nucleus Software. And I just want to start by giving a context to this conversation. We're speaking about the transformative stage of the banking sector. And I believe there's no better time to talk about the transformation here after the inroads that the sector has made. And you've been largely responsible for that, taking the digital acceptance of banking, of various financial services to every person. I want to understand from you, today the Prime Minister also spoke extensively about how the next phase of the growth in the banking sector and the financial services sector would be its digital adoption. How do you view this? And in that context, what surprises could the next 5 years get for the financial services industry?
We are at a very unique juncture of time where we have laid the ground level or the foundation level for the growth of the economy. For us to reach the $25 trillion mark by 2047, for us to be Viksit Bharat, it is important that we leverage this foundation that we have created in last 10 to 15 years in a very robust manner. We are talking about 1 billion transactions per day in next 2-3 years.
Correct.
That's 100 crore transactions happening digitally in our economy per day. And we have 10 crore small, micro, mini, nano enterprises. If we were to look at the average, 10 transactions per day average we are looking at, and 300 transactions per month. And if we can understand enough about the individual, about the nano or macro enterprise from these 300 transactions, it will be very easy for us to make a 5,000 rupee loan or a 10,000 rupee loan possible at a very reasonable interest rate of, let's say, 30 to 40%, as against 365% that they have to pay today.
Correct.
Right? And it is only when we eliminate these frictions, these heavy frictions, and make the life smoother, that we would be able to unleash the entrepreneurship that exists in our population, and each one of them would be able to produce something that would be of value to the society locally or globally, and that's how we would be able to make $25 trillion economy happen.
Correct. Mr. Dusad, I want to speak to you a little about the MSME space. A very large space creates a lot of value in terms of credit as well. Banks have been speaking to you with respect to credit assessment of MSMEs. To you as well, how big of an opportunity do you think it is for Nucleus Software going forward? And of course, a very seamless process as far as loans to MSME is concerned, to the larger economy, which is actually the buzzing engine, the MSME side of it. What kind of transformation could that get in terms of moving the economy forward in terms of growth?
See, if we were to again go back to the same 100 million micro, nano and small enterprises example, what we are looking at is, if we were to just talk about $10,000, 8 lakh rupees per enterprise on an average, then we are looking at $1 trillion book to be built, and that should be possible over 5 to 10 years. And then we can only think of next trillion, and then the next trillion, and then the next trillion. So we need to create, models, which is what Nucleus Software is working on. We need to create models which would make use of the various data points that are there, and decide whether a particular micro enterprise should be given a 5,000 rupee loan or a 10,000 rupee loan, and whether it should be given at 30% or 40%, or for that matter can be given at all.
Correct.
Only when we are able to leverage both this kind of data as well as our reach created through 1 lakh bank branches,
correct,
reach created through NBFCs, that we would the combination of data and reach in person will make things happen.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Very clearly, we're looking at a very large opportunity. Thank you so much for speaking to us. I'll let you enjoy the evening, and of course, listen to the speakers here. But with that, I'll toss to Ritu. I guess she's got the Deputy Governor with her. Let's hear what Ritu has to talk to the Deputy Governor about.
That's right. That's right. He's the man of the moment, and I have a Reserve Bank of India Deputy Governor, Mr. Swaminathan, with us. Mr. Swaminathan, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Let me just start by telling you about what the governor highlighted as the 5 key priorities, and also, with a warning of sorts that it is in good times, then when most mistakes are made. As the regulator, I wanted to understand, after 2 years of what has been a solid performance, are there pockets of stress that are emerging as a supervisor? Where do you see, some of the focus areas should be?
Yeah, first, thank you, Ritu, for having me here. It's my pleasure being here on the Banking Transformation Summit by CNBC. Yeah, right, of course, we are, the banking system today is riding the high wave, and thankfully every financial parameter that we track are all doing good. But we also know that accidents do happen on good roads, so we have got to be careful. But having engaged the regulated entities intensively the last couple of years, we are finding the measures are being very well received, and everyone is strengthening their risk management framework and being watchful in terms of what they do. So we only wish that we continue to keep our guards at all times. Thank you.
Sir, you've highlighted the, unsecured lending risks, which are now materializing into, other segments like credit cards. We're seeing emerging stress from the MFI segment. Are you worried that may spill on to larger segments like home loans? Should we expect more measures? Because even in the last policy, you did allude to the fact that, perhaps, there's reason to continue to warn this segment.
I don't think at this point in time, as I mentioned, whatever numbers that we are tracking, whether it is slippages or stress, is not at a level where it's a matter of concern requiring an intervention. Well, of course, these are matters that we will have to keep watching the incoming data. We have committed to remain vigilant on this, and then we will take steps as we go forward.
So, some of the recent regulations with regards to, the LCR guidelines, the project financing rules, have some of the lenders worried that it may significantly impact their capital and therefore the credit growth. At what stage are these discussions? How soon will we hear from the, RBI, and will there be tweaks to some of these circulars?
These are essentially, as you would know, discussion paper or draft guidelines. Extensive discussions are taking place, and I'm sure we will be mindful, and all of you know that we have followed a consultative approach to regulation, and we will take into account all the feedback and do what is right.
Lastly, do you think some of the measures that you've taken against, some of the banks, some of the NBFCs, has that message gone through to the system? Have these bilateral engagements with some of the continuing concerns you highlighted, whether that was mule accounts, internal accounts, etc., have they been taken care of, or has the message gone?
Tremendous impact. We are seeing quite a bit of seriousness in the boardrooms today, the kind of developments that we are seeing and the efforts that are being taken to implement the regulatory intent, not just the guidelines, is doing very well, and I'm sure that everyone is more responsible today to ensure that the financial system, as you mentioned about the mule accounts, financial system is not put to any misuse. We are seeing quite a bit of efforts on that. Good traction. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Deputy Governor. So that was the Deputy Governor, highlighting the balance sheets of banks remain healthy, although, of course, they need to be wary of the emerging risks. On that note, Yash, I'm going to toss it back to you for your guest.
Well, that's correct, Ritu. So I have Mr. Srinivasu MN of Bill Desk with me, and he's, rather the sector is the sector in focus today after that grand speech by the Prime Minister. Putting all the time in talking about, fintechs, the role that they're expected to play in taking our economy forward from this point. If you've got a chance to hear what the Prime Minister had to say, what were some of the key takeaways that he spoke about in terms of how you expect it to grow over the next 10 years and the contribution that you're supposed to make to the Indian economy from this point?
I think the first thing was an absolutely fascinating engagement that he had with the fintech community. Most important, I think the indicator, the takeaway was, I think it firmly cements Mumbai as the fintech hub for India. I think that's the first key takeaway. He also, of course, highlighted India's kind of very prominent, dominant perhaps role in digital payments in the world. Leaders for the world from today here onwards, and actually touched on all the right points. And even as we grow the payments volume, one should focus on things like cybersecurity and customer convenience, and ask the community kind of to think strongly about innovation there. And it's a very welcome message, areas that we're all focused on, but an absolutely fantastic session.
Okay. I want to speak to you a little about some of the problems that we hear from banks, from insurance companies, which sort of are looking to partner with a lot of fintechs in terms of getting their application into their business. Even today, regulators are a little hesitant when it comes to these banks or insurance companies acquiring a stake in these companies. They rather want them to partner with them. But on the other hand, insurance companies and banks are a little hesitant because, multiple partners could come on board under that mechanism. How do you see this? Do you think for the development of the ecosystem, it would be a good way to collaborate between banks, insurance companies, financial services to acquire stake and have, an exclusive partnership between the two? Or do you think what the regulator thinks and the hesitation is quite real?
No, I think perhaps the right way forward is to look at collaborative and strategic partnerships. Acquiring stakes I don't think is a very important or necessary thing, primarily because businesses are evolving, technology is changing very fast, business directions will change very fast. So I think it's a right approach is what the regulators are outlining. Do great diligence, have strong onboarding policies and get into multiple partnerships, see what's the right fit. And I think over the next 4 or 5 years we'll figure out who are the strong players, what is the right technology, and then kind of build from there on.
Okay. You spoke about that point which came from the Prime Minister, and I would want to allude to it again. That was the whole point of cybersecurity and cyber solutions. Cybersecurity is becoming a concern as, of course, naturally the fintech ecosystem grows. But the Prime Minister made a very important statement saying that cyber solutions have a very short life. Before you roll out the solution, the other day you know that it's been compromised again. So it's an evolving, constant process. How do you become the bad guy to fight the bad guys when it comes to the whole cyberspace, especially in the payments, which is such a critical infrastructure?
I think first thing what the statement shows is the Prime Minister's astute grasp of what it takes to be in this business, and how even as he evolves cybersecurity solutions, there is the bad actor who's trying to kind of find the backdoor entries. Asking the community to be vigilant, constantly innovate, I think was the right messaging. And that will remain a challenge, right? You keep building solutions and there's equally a community says, how do I break into it? It will keep evolving, but I think the messaging was correct, the focus is correct, that you need to constantly build solutions, not just sit back saying, I've built one and be with it. So I think that was the right focus that she provided to the audience too.
Correct, and I think that will be a focus area where fintechs will have to focus when it comes to, having a growth which is secured growth rather than just growing blindly. So that is an important statement that you make. But with that, we'll go back to Ritu. I think she's got someone with her for that conversation. On to Ritu.
Yes, I do have Mr. Aseem Dhruv with me, from SBFC. NBFC is very much in the focus, but before we get to the transformation they're seeing and what's happening there, are the lights still flashing orange, Mr. Dhruv? I'll hold that. Yeah.
So as a banker, it pays not to see the green light too often. It pays to always be a little sure of where you're headed. But more importantly, I think the economy is going through a great transition. It is just that it is time to be a little careful.
Okay, and where do you think these slips could happen? Because, we're in the good times. It's been a solid 2 years for the NBFCs. But now the macros are changing, perhaps not to their benefit to an extent.
So the sector always is like a pendulum. It swings from one extreme to the other. Yeah. It has been a Goldilocks scenario last year where everything, whether growth, whether it is in terms of NIMs, whether it is in terms of credit quality, everything has been perfect. So I think a little bit of reversal to the mean as the portfolio matures post-COVID would happen. But the mood is still of cautious optimism.
Well, unsecured lending is something that has been spoken about a lot, but are you seeing that now extend onto other sectors? For instance, with banks, we're seeing that, slip into credit cards. We're also hearing of MFI stress, and now with states going into elections, are you worried agriculture loans, and therefore, these new pockets of stress may emerge?
So see, the economy has gone through these transitions before. So I don't think there is need for panic or worry. There will be swings. You don't have all days are not the same. There will be some days where you'll have everything right. There will be some days you'll have challenges. So are there challenges in the sector? Certainly there are challenges in the sector. But is it that the growth is coming off the cliff, or is it that we're not going to grow? That is not true. The economy still continues on a very solid footing, and the demand for credit still continues to be extremely strong. But yes, you'll have to be careful to segregate need from demand.
Well, in terms of the credit growth again, what are the pockets where you're seeing constructive, demand for credit? Where are the pockets that you're seeing a bit of a slowdown?
So housing continues to be robust, and that drives really the economy. So housing continues to be robust. MSME continues to be very good, and a lot of inclusion is happening in MSME. So there are players like us who are actually bringing small businesses into the organized fold. So there is a fair amount of action happening there. Commercial vehicles are also doing fairly well. They have been in a good cycle for a while. That reflects the underlying strength of the economy. Agriculture, rural has been a little soft comparatively. So rural, there's been a little soft. Semi-urban is doing extremely well.
Well, on that note, Mr. Dhruv, thank you very much for speaking to us here. Thank you, and we look forward to hosting you at the event.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to take a short break on that note, but don't go anywhere. We'll continue our coverage from here, the second edition of the Banking Transformation Summit. Stay tuned. Well, welcome back. We're here live at the Banking Transformation Summit, and who better than two of the most well-known faces, perhaps, in private banking today. One on his
colleagues from our past life.
Yes, well, one on his way out, and one just taking charge. So we not at all, Mr. Shyam Srinivasan from Federal Bank and Mr. Ashok Vaswani, of course, from Kotak Mahindra Bank. From one banker to the other, taking charge of a new private bank. What would your advice to him be?
I think he needs no advice from me, and I think he's inherited one of the finest banks in the country, and he'll take it to another level.
Well, Mr. Vaswani, since you've taken charge, you've spoken about the 4 C's. That will be the core focus areas for Kotak Mahindra Bank. Give us a sense of, how you settled in, what progress you're making on all of those 4 C fronts.
First of all, absolutely delighted to be back home. It's been a long time, but a Bombay boy is always a Bombay boy, so delighted to be back home. We're making a lot of progress at the bank. Like Shyam said, it's a great platform. I wish I could take any credit for it, but it's a great platform, and we just got to take it to the next level. And it all starts and ends with the customer. So if we get it right by the customer, everything else falls through, and that's what we are focused on.
Well, Kotak Mahindra Bank's loss has been Federal Bank's gain. So let me ask both of you about that. With Mr. Manian leaving, one of the oldest hands at Kotak Mahindra Bank, and this leadership transition that you're in the midst of, has the ship stabilized?
Well, I think it has. And it's always great to have colleagues take over other companies, right?
Yeah.
Because then we are friends. And I'm really glad Mr. Manian got the Federal Bank job.
Yeah.
Sad to see my old friend go, but it's wonderful to have a friend at the helm of the company, and I wish him very best of luck.
Okay, and Mr. Srinivasan, your gain, what is the word of advice that you'd have for your successor from Mr. Vaswani?
No, I'll tell you, for Manian, the best thing I would like to give as a gift is a superb platform. Right? I always said that we're playing a test match.
Yeah.
The first 2 tough days we've seen through. He has a great chance to accelerate and build a fantastic bank. We are determined to be the most admired bank. With due respects to my dear friend, we will be the most admired bank. And I think Manian has the opportunity and will make it absolutely the best in the country.
What is the unfinished business you'd like your successor to take on?
This is a long journey, right? We are searching excellence. There's no finish line. So Manian will build it to another level, and his successor will build it to another level. But we're pursuing most admired. And most admired is earned, pushed very hard. And I'm sure he will take the torch further there.
Well, Mr. Vaswani, you've taken over at a time when the bank is facing challenges with respect to the RBI embargo as well. It's been a few months now since April. Of course, in your letter to shareholders, you said it is evident perhaps more needed to be done. How far ahead are you in that journey, to sort of, get out of that embargo, satisfy the regulator? What progress has been made?
So I think we've made very good progress. The teams have been working very hard at it. But ultimately, it's for the RBI to give us the green light, and we're working very closely with them. And fingers crossed, hopefully they'll be pleased with the efforts that we've done.
But so far, what is the impact you've seen? Because, you cannot have new credit cards, onboarding through digital channels. What is the sort of impact we should expect?
So as we kind of talked about, and we've also done at the earnings conference, we've had a certain amount of impact. We quantified that. It's unfortunate. We'll work hard to put it behind us and move ahead.
Well, speaking of credit cards, that's emerged as an area of stress. Last year, we were talking about unsecured credit. Many were brushing it off as something that is the problem of fintechs. And now we're seeing that show up in the credit card portfolio, perhaps even spreading to MFI. How long before we see a sort of turnaround in this segment?
I think it's a little exaggerated. I don't believe it's a systemic issue. It could be specific portfolio for specific companies. I haven't seen any substantial deterioration for the reasons we've always said, right? The way credit is underwritten is materially different than it was a few years ago. So unless you've given all the controls a go and missed everything, you can't see a dramatic deterioration. Yeah, there will be pockets of stress, but within a range, and I don't believe it will be anything of the magnitude that is visualized. And the regulatory interventions that have come in the last 6 months have cooled it off.
Yeah.
So I don't believe it will be a material problem.
Well, we're now some time away from just talking about the challenge of NPAs, and now we move from the fight against bad loans to the fight for deposits. Let me just quickly touch upon that because, household savings not going into plain vanilla bank accounts, also looking at chasing other higher yielding assets. Do you expect that to sort of curtail the credit growth because deposit growth of the system also continues to lag?
See, look, first of all, I think all the questions in the conference we are previewing right now.
Yeah.
But I think the whole idea is, look, there will be customer demand, and where customer demand comes, things will flow to it. Deposits in its totality is not the issue. It's really the quality or the pricing of the deposit. So we will have to adjust for that kind of thing. But these are cycles which we go through, and I'm sure we'll come out in a good place.
Well, Mr. Srinivasan and Mr. Vaswani, thank you very much, and thank you for being here at our event. We look forward to hosting you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, on that note, we're going to have to take another short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll continue our coverage right here from the Banking Transformation Summit.
What does it take to build India's largest startup platform? It takes a journey of starting out as an unknown and ending up as unforgettable. It takes more than 2 decades of celebrating the most influential and influencing the most celebrated entrepreneurs. From chronicling the stories of India's startup universe to becoming a success story in itself, as India's longest-running show on startups and entrepreneurship, celebrating 21 action-packed years of building India's biggest startup community. Young Turks at 21, only on CNBC-TV18 and CNBC-TV18.com. What does it take?
From David to Goliath, from the smallest business ventures to multi-million-dollar global corporations. Meet the movers and shakers, today's newsmakers, and tomorrow's leaders. Understand what makes markets move, how companies make quantum leaps, and how giant corporations stay ahead. Get the biggest business stories of the day, power-packed into 30 minutes. On Business 360 at these times. From David to Goliath, From the smallest business ventures to multi-million-dollar global corporations. Meet the movers and shakers. Today's newsmakers and tomorrow's leaders. Understand what makes markets move, how companies make quantum leaps, and how giant corporations stay ahead. Get the biggest business stories of the day, power-packed into 30 minutes. On Business 360 at these times. From David to Goliath. From the smallest business ventures to multi-million-dollar global corporations. Meet the movers and shakers. Today's newsmakers and tomorrow's leaders. Understand what makes markets move, how companies make quantum leaps, and how giant corporations stay ahead. Get the biggest business stories of the day, power-packed into 30 minutes. On Business 360 at these times. From David